All right. Hello to everybody joining. We're going to give it a few minutes to let the room fill up a little bit, and we're going to start our presentation. I'll go into this, but for anybody that is here already, we do have a chat in the right-hand side of the screen. At any point during this presentation, please feel free to type in a question, and we will definitely get to it. And if we don't get to it during the presentation, we will follow up in an email. But our intention is to answer all questions that we can today. So that chat over on the right-hand side is where you do that. I'm going to give it one more minute just to fill up a little bit more, and we'll get going. Okay, our numbers look good. I'm going to kick us off. My name is Courtney Legall. I am involved with the marketing team here at the University of San Diego, specifically for the MS in Engineering Management and Leadership. And you are joining our live webinar, Shaping Your Engineering Future, Career Mastery. We're really excited about this presentation. Great panel today, and we'll get into formal introductions here shortly. But first, I wanted to tell you, I know some of you are already enrolled in the program, but if you are not, just wanted to give you a little bit of a note about who we are as a program. This is our MS in Engineering Management Leadership. It's 30 units, 10 courses, including a capstone. Our semesters run 5 consecutive semesters, and the program can be completed in 20 months, so just less than 2 years. And we have each semester is 14 weeks. You only take one class at a time per semester, per semester. So you have 2 classes in a semester. They don't overlap. You'll take one for 7 weeks, another for 7 weeks. So it's meant to work with working professionals, and our goal is really to create the next cohort of engineering leaders. And so with that being said, I'll tell you who's at the helm of the project. I wrote out a little intro. So Dr. G.B Singh, it's my great pleasure to introduce him. He's our academic director of the MS in Engineering Management Leadership Program. Dr. Singh brings a wealth of experience from both the academic and corporate worlds, uniquely positioning himself to lead and inspire. Currently, as a director of business management at Solar Turbines, he spearheads project execution and directs a globally dispersed team. His career path began as a field engineer in Dubai and evolved through a series of international assignments that have enriched his perspective and expertise. Dr. Singh's educational journey is equally impressive, holding a PhD, an MS in mechanical engineering, a BS in instrumentation and control, and an MBA with a focus on information systems. His contributions to the field are substantial, including numerous publications, presentations at prestigious technical conferences, and successfully securing funded grants. Beyond his professional and academic accomplishment, Dr. Singh is deeply committed to fostering a symbiotic relationship between academia and industry. He actively serves on the boards of UCSD's Corporate Affiliate Program and USD's Executive Advisory Board, advising on engineering and management programs. His mentorship extends to global incubators and accelerators, where he guides budding entrepreneurs and engineers towards success. As we dive into today's webinar, we are honored to have him share his insights, experiences, and vision for the future of engineering, management, and leadership. And with that, I am going to pass it over.
Thank you, Courtney. Can you hear me okay, Courtney?
We can, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And I know you all are joining from probably your break time, wherever you are, or globally. So once again, thanks for your interest. Thanks for your time. And we hopefully will make it worth it for this time that you're spending here with us. And there'll be some good key takeaways for you out of this. So as Courtney mentioned, this particular program is geared towards working professional, people who have probably had an engineering background, had a degree, but now are getting into the, as we call them, corporate world. And for them, it is how do you maneuver through this world? You have lots of questions. And really, this particular webinar was designed with that in mind, because as an academic director, I get a lot of students reach out to me, a lot of young professionals come to me asking these questions. And really what we have done is we have leveraged a lot of your questions, lots of your Q&A, and come up with this idea of this webinar. But before I do that, before I go any further, I want to quickly introduce you to the program board. I honestly believe that any academia can only succeed if they have a very, very strong connection back to the industry. And when we were launching this program, that was something I was very cognizant of, is getting the best in the industry on our board who have very rich experience. So what you see here is folks, you can read for yourself their bio. My intent is not to introduce every one of the board member, but the intent is that they all are from different parts of the business, whether it is genetics, biomed, or energy industry, or human resources, and also globally dispersed in different continents of the world. So without further ado, I want to go to the next slide, if you would, and introduce one of our keyboard members, Kary Saleeby, who is here with us. Hello, Kary. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Kary. Kary and I have known each other for now 20 years. He has been my customer in his previous capacity. Kary has spent about 42 years with ExxonMobil. I'm pretty sure you know about this company. One of the top five, as we call them, the big fives of oil and gas industry or energy industry. Kary started his career mainly working in upstream and downstream chemical, you name it. Every part of ExxonMobil, he has worked there. And he probably has done almost every sort of work, whether it was projects, whether it was research and development, whether it was operations, maintenance, in field, in office. He has done it all. And I think what is most something that is really always I've respected him for is that he has a very wide perspective, and really his understanding of international business is mind-blowing, and that really comes from the time that he has spent in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Nigeria, France, Spain, you name it all. And now Kary has retired, and one of the thing, this is his giving back period, so he's volunteering to a lot of this kind of stuff that he does with us. So I'm very thankful to Kary for spending this hour with us and sharing some of his insight. So with that, I'm going to kick this webinar off with a few Q&As. So Kary, once again, a warm welcome. And Kary is right now in the southern U.S. and hopefully, and I'm here in San Diego. So we are kind of, you can almost say U.S. apart. Kary, it's a pleasure to see you. And probably, I've as an introduction further, building upon your introduction, I have seen you grow in your career where you were somebody who was an individual contributor to somebody who eventually led a large team that was, globally dispersed. I think one question that everybody asks me, and that probably was also the foundation for why we created this program, is, do I stay in technical field, or should I go and start doing things that are more into the management side? So do I remain an individual contributor, as we call them, technical expert, technical lead, like a tech steward, or should I expand more and get into the business side of it and become more of a corporate person? So Kary, you have done that journey. You have felt it all. What are your thoughts?
Thanks very much, JB. I really appreciate it. Nice introduction. When I first came to work, I really wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do when I got out of college, and it just wasn't there at that point. But what I found was that when I took my initial job and started that, I found fairly quickly that I wanted to do more technical work. Not just organizing things and managing things kind of thing, but I wanted to get it more into some technical detail. I spent a couple of years basically down in the Louisiana area and got to do some offshore work in the upstream, which I found really interesting, especially in the rotating equipment area. And it turned out that I went to management and I said, look, I'd really like to specialize in something like this. Where in the corporation does that happen? And they moved me up, and they accommodated me, and they moved me up to a place where we had a centralized machinery group, although it was primarily for the downstream, for refining and also chemicals. And, I found that really interesting. I was able to do my technical work, not worry so much about some of the other personnel kinds of things that you have to worry about in the management positions and the like. Occasionally, though, as you go through things, you sometimes you want to test out, do I really want to do the other thing? But I was lucky enough that I ended up working for a company that had quite a good technical ladder. And that technical ladder actually improved a lot over the years. And also, as I became more experienced and went overseas to a couple of assignments and the like, I found the company kept putting me in as sitting in for the supervisors quite frequently. And that gave me a taste of what that kind of job was like. And while I found some of it interesting, I kind of came to the conclusion, basically in those first 5 years of working for the company, that I really did want to specialize in a particular technical area, that I thought that would be a really good thing. It would allow me to move and see a lot more diverse things in the company. And that was much more along the lines of what I enjoyed doing, and give me more opportunities actually to travel the world. One of the things I wanted to do when I got out of school was get to see the world. And that would give me a lot more opportunity to do that kind of a thing. It's different for everybody. You have to figure out what you want in those kinds of situations. And sometimes the companies kind of pressure you to make a decision early. Sometimes they let you go along. Okay, it varies a lot depending on who those managers are that you're talking to in those situations. But it's something, though, that you have to really think about. And I think as well, don't be afraid to tell them what you want. A lot of people are afraid of that. And I think that's a real mistake. But that was one of the things I made early on. I figured out I could really let them know what I wanted to do. And they accommodated that. If you're doing a good job, they think anybody can do it. If you're doing a good job, you'll adjust. So I think it's it's about being honest, being straightforward, and also doing the job that they put you in. You don't ask necessarily for the job. They're going to put you in a few jobs that you probably don't like, and they're going to expect you to do it anyway. And if you do it, that makes them all the more flexible in meeting what you want in the long term.
Yeah. Kary, we do have a question for you in the chat, and in relation to that, they said, I feel very identified with that. What skills would you recommend we develop if we want to achieve this kind of role?
I think everything starts off in the basic with a technical background. If you are good at the technical work, that gives you lots of options, I think, right there. All right. Because when you first go into a company, especially a large company like I did, you're going to be put in a technical job first for the most part. You're not going to be a manager. You're not going to be a supervisor. You're going to be somebody doing a specific task and a specific job. You have to be able to do that. That's how you break the ice. You do that, you do it well. You maybe even do it in a couple of different disciplines or a couple of different areas. That gets people's attention. That's how you get to where you can start deciding a little bit more about what you do rather than letting them tell you what you're going to do.
Thank you.
Great suggestion. So I think, Kary, I took two things as takeaway, and I think I'll start with something just to summarize. I think you have a great point, and I have an analogy for what you just described in Word. Is really, it boils down to making your own tea as a letter T. And what that T has is that you have a very strong vertical, which is really deep rooted into something which is very technical, which you have mastery on, you have excellence on, right? In your case, it was rotating equipment. If anybody in ExxonMobil had a question, they knew Kary Saleeby is the encyclopedia for rotating equipment. So you had that T, very strong, deeply rooted. But I think what you did eventually is that you started working on how do you expand the horizontal portion of it, and started taking, not only understanding your own rotating equipment, but then how does it impact electrical engineering interface?
Right.
How does it impact control system interface? How does it impact, materials part of it? So I think then you get multidisciplinary knowledge and the management skills. So very well, spoken about that. And I think what I really liked about Kary, what you just mentioned, and that's something I have also seen in my career. People don't tell what they want. I think there is as we call it, there is power in manifestation. What you want will come to you, but I think you got to tell people.
That's a really good point, JB. I think that's true, but I also think you have to be ready for that moment where they're going to put you in a job that you don't want. And the reason I think that is so important is because if they put you in a job that you don't want and you do a good job there, that's what really, that can be a turning point in how your career is going to go. It's just like you're always going to work for somebody, right? And quite frankly, in big corporations in particular, but even in smaller companies, you're expected to work with whoever they put you under, period. You have to make it work. It doesn't matter that you don't get along with that person or you don't like their style. You have to suck it in and do it right and make sure that you have a successful thing there. That's what they look for. That's one of the key items that allows you to get to where you want to go, really.
Yeah. As my previous boss used to tell me, when you don't get a chance to select your boss, but so find a way to like something about it or her. So that's a good point. Hey, Kary, just pivoting to something which also is, as I was introducing you and I, something that would catch anybody's eyes. Amount of work that you have done across the globe, be it in Russia or difficult places like Nigeria, to something in a beautiful tropical weather of Malaysia, Singapore. I think as you have gone through these multiple countries, one thing, in these days, this day and age, we always talk about D&I, diversity and equity and inclusion. And, today probably it's a lot talked about and a lot mainstream, but probably in your early days, that was probably not a mainstream thing. You come from actually an industry which is predominantly male dominated, if you would, and, but you are one role model for me that I saw. You always gave people a seat on the table. I mean, can you speak a little bit about how, first of all, you gained a deeper appreciation for DE&I, and what is your advice for people around you as far how do we develop and how do we address that bias that many of us are born with?
That's a good question. My first overseas assignment was actually in Spain, and I had actually taken Spanish for a couple of years in high school. I knew a little bit of Spanish, although the Spanish I learned and the Spanish they spoke where I was in Spain was not very similar, but also being in a Western type of world, it was different. But I was a little bit more familiar with the circumstances and things there and the culture there than it was later on when I went to a place like Malaysia, which was drastically different than anything like Spain. Just drastically different. Different languages, different cultures, the religious things that went on in Malaysia, between the Malays and the Muslim world and the Chinese and their religions and the like, and then you had the Indians there as well. There was a huge Indian population in Malaysia with all of those religions involved. I was lucky in that I found that interesting. I liked learning about those cultures. I had some friends of mine that weren't particularly interested in learning, and I saw them have more problems in going into that kind of a situation. But I think they learned fairly quickly that by learning about those various cultures and those various backgrounds, that they started becoming more entwined, if you will, in the culture and the way things are done in those kinds of situations in those countries. You almost have to embrace it, I think, and be willing to learn, be willing to spend your time, and you also have to be willing to make a fool out of yourself sometimes. You try something that they are doing, and you might be way off base, but they are phenomenally friendly. The vast majority of them are very friendly, and they're proud of their cultures, and they like teaching, and they might like helping you understand why they do things the way they do there. So it's about embracing what they're doing and what they are, and learn it. It's really quite fascinating, all the differences that you see around the world in all of them. Japan is another great example. I never lived in Japan, but I did a lot of work in Japan with our suppliers and the like there. And I got to really enjoy Japan. But it's much more of a very formal kind of thing than, let's say, things were in Malaysia and the like. But they are really an amazing culture, and getting to know them was a big part of my career. I spent quite a bit of time there working with some of the refineries and some of the suppliers. So I think you have to embrace that kind of thing and really enjoy it, and you'll be amazed at how many friends you walk away with.
Yeah, Kary, you remind me of something you talked about. You should be willing to make a fool of yourself. You brought something to my mind, was my early days in China. Traveling there, I was, I was initially used to sometimes, you are growing. I grew up also in Western culture, and that slurping noise with chopsticks, I felt very offended with it. I'm just sharing that example with you. I'm like, how can people do that on a table, an executive of a company slurping noodles in front of me? I felt like, boy, that's not table manners. But then I realized, boy, if I want to be a part of them, I got to slurp. Yeah. I got to learn that. And I think that is what you're saying, is how do you embrace, and something that may not be something that you want to do in your upbringing, or you never wanted to do, something that you embrace, you learn, and then you make friends in those. Great example. Kary, just to, you were lucky and you worked very hard, you grew up. I'm sure as you were growing, as you were spending time in these different countries, you were alluding to it, you made great friends. One of the things that we have kind of embedded in our program here at USD is something called as capstone program. And as a part of that capstone program is we give our students hands-on experience about a project. Some of our students are probably, just came out of school and have joined us. Many are already working. But I think as a part of that capstone, one of the strong fabric that we have embedded into the capstone program is the mentorship part of it. Because you and I know this very well, and as we have grown in our careers, it was that somebody, whether it was a role model or whether somebody who was always on top of us to get things done, that person or those individuals made us where we are. So mentorship is very, very important. However, for young folks that are here on this webinar, how do they go about taking charge of that career? I mean, everybody wants probably a mentorship with Elon Musk, but he's not going to do that for you. So how do you want a mentorship? How do you go about, engaging mentors? How do you go about working in your company? And how do you take ownership of your career? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, I got fairly lucky in that I had 2 or 3 folks that I kind of identified relatively early on. After those first couple of years where I was down in Louisiana, I then went up to our research place where the main machinery group, if you want to call it that, was kind of located. And it didn't take me long to figure out 2 or 3 of the people in that group that I thought were really, really good people. And so when a job comes up and one of those people were involved in that job, I kind of quickly stepped in and said, hey, I want to work with you on that if I can. Most of the time, they were pretty accommodating for that kind of thing. Okay. Yes, they had to spread it around all of the young people, right? But most of the time, they were pretty accommodating for that kind of thing. And that, you have to take a little initiative to get in the door, so to speak, sometimes with that. And I had several folks that were turned out to be just amazing mentors in the industry for me. Some of the first big meetings I went to with them at visiting a supplier like a Solar or G or whoever it happened to be. And just watching them, how they handled themselves in the meeting and how they directed the meeting the way they wanted it to go, you learn by that, right? You learn the techniques that they do in order to get the kind of results from the meetings that they want and the like. I also learned a lot from them about just simply doing business. How do you do business with some of them? What's a negotiating tactic on some things? How do you turn things into win-win? And I would say that's one of the key things I learned in those early years is don't make it adversarial unless you really have no other choice. Make it so everybody walks out of there happy, and your chances are awfully good you're going to end up with a really successful project or whatever it happens to be that you're working on there. And it also helps to be friendly. Go to dinner with them occasionally. Take them to dinner. We were allowed to take the OEMs and the suppliers to dinner sometimes. Okay, I did that a number of times in my career as well. You get a lot of work done in those informal kind of get-togethers, and you actually learn a lot as well about what their problems are in that company and things that they're working on. And actually, I found that was a really good way to find out long-term what's happening in a lot of things that might affect you down the road and the like. So I think identifying those mentors, and as well, as soon as you can, you kind of become a mentor as well for the people down who don't have the experience that you've got at that point. You may not be anywhere near where those people are way up there that are mentoring you, but you can still help the folks that are down even less experienced than you are. That's how you learn to transfer technology, I think, back and forth, up the ladder, so to speak. As you get higher in the ladder, of course, you're putting it more down than you are up and getting it from upstairs and the like. But that's how the system fundamentally works, even though I don't know anybody that controls it. You have to kind of control it yourself, and you have to figure out, okay, I'm weak in this area. I need to go find somebody that can help me here. Or I'm strong in this area. I can help this person here. Sometimes without even it being part of your job. Yeah. You have to show that initiative as well. And that's a key thing that companies also look for. Don't wait till somebody tells you to do something. If you think it needs to be done, go do it.
Kary, that's a great advice in terms of, you got to be able to do it both ways. As you rightly pointed out, it has to be a win-win. Something that I have seen many times, many times fresh young graduates join my company, and I'm having a, meeting with them one-on-one, and I ask them a question: where do you want to be in 10 years or 5 years? And they say, in your job. And I take it in a very positive way, and say, that's great. That's a great ambition. But boy, it's only your first day in the company, and you are telling me that you will be in my job in 5 years. I think what I have seen is that at times we try to be, we only go after the wins, not the win-wins. And I think you bring something very important, that if you have a broader perspective, if you are thinking about, okay, how my company wins in this, what sort of legacy am I going to create? I think those are you got to start thinking from the bigger perspective than having a selfish view of just climbing up the corporate ladder by leveraging your relationship. I think if you start moving away from that, because many of kids, they have done that in their schools, right? It's like I want to be the first among all. They are very competitive, and I think they have come through. And especially if you're in engineering career, you know what competition is.
That's
You
right.
have worked hard through that. So
That's right.
maybe how does one expand that understanding, and how do you embrace that change? Is that, hey, this is all in for all, and how do you make sure that you leave a legacy in your company and multiplied effect, if I would. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think as I got more experience and especially broad experience, I ended up doing almost every type of machinery job there was in the company. Okay. And saw just about every process that we have. We have lots of processes, but especially when you throw chemicals in there and the like, and the like. I think at some point you go through a major transition where you were the one being mentored, and now you're the one doing the mentoring. And you learn eventually that you're making the company better by letting the younger folks and the less experienced folks and the folks that have never worked in that particular area before, getting them to do that. And because then you've got more and more people that can do that. You're multiplying yourself. You're making yourself, just to a certain degree in your image, so to speak, okay, with your background and your capability, and you're getting other people to do that. And it becomes a broadening tree, if you will, okay, with more and more people doing that. Probably a really good example of that I had in my career was we had an FPSO, a floating ship, where we had a bunch of gas turbines on it. The electrical guys guaranteed me that their system would never fail. That if we had a shutdown on the system, this system would automatically start the emergency lube oil pumps on the turbines, and we would have no problem whatsoever, right? And I just couldn't get there with this software system. I've had too many troubles with computers and the like in my life, right? And I finally convinced management to put in a hardwired system into the emergency lube oil pump, so if we lost everything, we could still make sure those pumps ran, even though the electrical guys were convinced that would never happen. We put it in. Eventually, we got the site, got everything up and running. About 3 months after we started the thing up, they had a crash. They lost everything in the whole plant. Everything was gone, including the software system that was supposed to start the ELO pumps. But because we had installed the hardwired system, we saved the turbines. And I remember I took that memo that I wrote, convincing people to put in that hardwired system, and I put it on my wall, and underneath it I wrote, "Paid for my career." So, but we took that and we passed that down to everybody. Everybody dealing in that situation knew that, hey, we can't have that happen. And so, everybody had the benefit of that in all the future projects that came along that were similar to that or in similar situations to that.
So, Kary, this brings me to something very, very important. As we were planning this course of engineering management, a lot of institutes I saw, we did a lot of benchmarking, and most of this course, if you would see on engineering management, actually stops at engineering management. I was specifically very cognizant about adding leadership to it, because I felt like, you can be a great manager, but if you're not a great leader, you will not be leaving any legacy. So from the, you have met lots of great leaders in your career. I have met plenty. What will you give as key leadership attributes for successful leader of this modern century? Today's world, what are the key attributes, leadership attributes, that one should try to improve and build upon, especially for a lot of our young folks who have joined us here. Can you give us some of your thoughts on leadership attributes?
The first thing I look at when I look at somebody, is that something I want to emulate? Is there sincerity? Do I really think they're sincere about what they're doing? Do they really want everybody to succeed? Those are the kinds of things that I find make really, really good leaders in almost all circumstances. They can be hard-nosed, but that doesn't mean that they're not being sincere and they don't care about the people that are working for them. People don't like it when people don't like them. And I've worked for a few people like that, and it's not a lot of fun working for them, quite frankly. The best ones I've seen and the ones I tried to emulate are the ones they're sincere. They want to see everybody succeed, and they do things to try to make that happen. They have they have a wide enough vision, I would say, to work things, and they have I hate to say personality, but I don't know how else to put it, where it comes across that they really do care about you and they want you and your colleagues all to succeed as well. And that's what I tried to emulate when I got to be old and one of the guys up there trying to get a bunch of new people up to speed in the machinery business. That's what I tried to get across to them, that it's only to my benefit if you succeed. And so I sincerely want to make sure that you succeed in this business. So it's a tough thing to do, I think, but I do think that there are some folks that I've dealt with at that level that they're not very good at that. But I think most of them really do try to do that. And the best ones, I have no doubt, do that.
So being genuine, being sincere, right, is what you would probably put as key leadership attributes that you want our leaders to emulate. Great.
Along that line, we do have another question. They said they did their undergrad in instrumentation and control with a year of experience, started their master's in management. They really want to know, being in an early career phase, how do you think they can leverage both their skills and little experience and look different apart from other applicants? Excuse me. It's right there in the right-hand column if you want to read through it again. I know it was a little wordy, but
yes.
Basically,
so
early
probably, Kary, the question is, how does one leverage what they have as their background? So this individual has a background in instrumentation or controls engineering, and also has a management degree. And the question is, how can somebody who has, if you would say you have the ingredients, the key ingredients already exist, then how do you go about, building upon those skills? And how can you stand out?
The easiest way I find to do this, you have to respect everybody. I always told my folks, there is no dumb question. Come in and ask questions. Don't hesitate. Nobody knows it all, including me. And don't hesitate to challenge me, because I'm not always right. There are times when I've been wrong. We all fail, or we all get the wrong answer on occasion, right? And so I think it's a very realistic approach in my mind as to what goes on in the world and what goes on in our business and in our sector. And the other piece of that is just being honest and fair to everybody. Appreciate what people's real positives are and help them get better on whatever their negatives might be, so to speak, is a key part of that as well, I think.
Yeah, and if if I may also add something there, in my opinion, I think it ties back to your question or your point about being sincere and being genuine. I guess if, as in your early career, I think you got to be very sincere about, putting in the hard work, because I believe there is no shortcut to that. Putting in the hard work and being genuine by saying, "Look, I don't know this, but I will learn about it."
Right. And I think the other thing there, JB, is also don't hesitate from taking the hard problems. You learn when you're solving problems. The best thing that ever happened to me early in my career was the platform we had that was an absolute disaster, is the only way really to put it. And I got the job of going out there and pretty much they almost gave me blank check to do anything I needed to get the machinery on that platform up and running. Yeah, I spent something like 86 out of 90 days offshore working on that thing. But you know something? That's the job that I look back on now that I learned the most on in my entire career. You have to be willing to tackle the things that look absolutely terrible and impossible. And if you can turn something like that around, boy, is that a real positive for you.
Yeah, I agree. Great. So moving on, I hope that answered the question. Moving on, I'm just wrapping up because I do want to leave some time for question, but something I want to go to, and something that I initially, and I'll be very honest with you, initially I used to think that it is something about red tape, but eventually in my career, as I got wiser by the day, I realized how important it is, and that is related to health, safety, and compliance. Initially I used to think, man, why do when I was a field engineer, I used to go and they will say, oh, you have to fill all these forms to see, is the workplace okay? Is it safe for you to work? I'm like, 1 hour I'm going to fill this form and then I'm going to do the work, or go in the morning on a safety toolbox discussion,
right,
or getting before a contract, sitting in a compliance training to understand, something about, how to avoid a Foreign Corrupt Practice Act in this country.
right.
These things always used to blow me off, and like, oh man, there's so much of red tape. But as I got wiser, I felt, wow, this is very important. What has been your appreciation and what has been your personal experience in the space of safety? Because you worked offshore, one of the most difficult areas to work beyond space, and compliance. Can you just talk a few of your experiences there?
Yeah, I view ethics, safety, health, and environment as absolutely fundamental to any business license. If you don't have those, you're not going to succeed. There's a lot of work that goes into those. And you have to be willing to call people out. But, most companies have some pretty detailed procedures and training that goes on in all of those areas. But I remember, I think in the 40 plus years that I worked, that's one of the areas where I have actually seen, quite frankly, the most advancement. The risk tolerance is completely different now than it was when I started. When it comes to those things, they have come a long way, but we also say we never get there. We have to keep going. We have to keep getting better in those areas. We can't have ethical problems. That's just not possible. You can't have big safety incidents, or you shouldn't have any safety incidents, is what your goal should be. Okay. Also for the health and the environment, same thing applies. Those kinds of issues, you have to realize you can bet the company on. Go back and look at companies like Enron. Go back and look at companies like what happened with Piper Alpha and Occidental Petroleum in the North Sea. Look at Bhopal, what happened with Bhopal in India a number of years back with Union Carbide and the plant there, okay? Those kinds of incidents, you're betting the company. We don't want to be betting the company. Those are exactly the kinds of things you just can't have happen. So it's always a focus. Every day, every hour that you're working, you have to be thinking about these things. Don't let them happen. And the companies have large amounts of training and everything else on it. It varies a lot from company to company. I actually enjoyed seeing some of the stuff from other companies in the one I worked in because they had a little different perspective on some things. And those are important too. There's a lot of sharing actually that goes on amongst companies. That's one of the areas where you can share and not get into some of the other problems that you have there. Okay. So I think that's absolutely fundamental. It starts the day you go to work these days, and it doesn't end even after you retire. I hate to tell you, it doesn't end there either, because all that gets ingrained into you. And even in my everyday life now, I still think about those kinds of things, and I find other people are not thinking about that.
Right. I think value of ethical behavior, I think you can probably ingrain that. And, some of the things we say, hey, I leave some things in my office, but bring those safety, I have started doing that. I bring a lot of safety thing back home. I bring a lot of my ethics back home and, give that to even my own, all my, loved ones. I want to inculcate that in my loved ones. That's a great explanation. And I think you got to live, as they say, you got to live these things. These are table stakes. You got to live them every day. Kary, I think we are going to probably, take a pause here. I mean, I have several other questions. We can keep this going, but I do want to take a pause here because we are close to, about 10 minutes left for the presentation time. I want to open this one up back to Courtney if there are any questions, and to the audience. So.
Hi, thank you so much. I put in the chat, just so you all can see there on the right. We're open for Q&A. So if you have anything, please feel free to fire away. You've got two incredible experts here and willing to answer questions, which is a great thing to have. So I don't have any current that we haven't already addressed, but if they do pop up, I will for sure let you know.
Great. Well, in that case, I do have one question for you that has always been, and this question is actually my question. So, Kary, one of the challenges you have as you are coming in, new into the company, is networking. And, one thing I've learned is that people who are good at networking do grow very well in a company. It is not something that is taught in any school generally, and most of the time, if you are technically somebody, the way it works is you put your head down, you get your degrees done, you get your GPA up, you get your, GRE scores and GMAT scores, and you SAT scores, and you excel. That's how we have ingrained our future generation. When it comes to, taking that time off, and whether whether you're a man or a female, either way, it's like, who wants to go to that networking event, like ERG events? People generally don't go there, generally speaking. What's your take on networking in your career growth?
Part of your responsibility as an employee in the company, I think we kind of mentioned it before, is multiplying yourself. I don't want my young folks to go through some of the stuff that I did. I want them to know that up front, learn it up front, and avoid that kind of stuff down the road. Not only that, but what I also find is that I learn a lot when I ask them or try to let them have advantage of something I've learned. They all have a different perspective on things, and sometimes, quite often, okay, these days actually, they'll come back with a better solution than what I had back in those days for something. So you never stop learning. And that networking is a way for you to never stop learning, and for other people to take advantage of what you think you've learned, even though it may not be the ultimate answer in some cases, right? it's remarkable the amount of stuff that is out there that you don't know about and might solve a problem that you're working on. Yeah, I often think these days maybe AI is one of these days going to close the gap on that. But something in me just says that's not likely to happen.
Yeah, but you got to still know what to ask it. So I would say even asking the right question is an art, as they say, right? Defining a problem is more difficult than solving a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt.
So,
No doubt.
Hey, we did have two questions. If you're interested. We have two questions pop up. Really great questions. The first one is, what would you guys tell your 20-year-old selves?
Go first.
You want to take that one first, JB?
I'll probably I'll tell my, the 20-year-old self, I would probably tell myself is that I should spend a little bit more time in networking, kind of where I was talking about. I wish I had done a little bit more, communication. And I think it is not about just communicating upwards. It is not about communicating just downwards, but it is holistic, including your peers. So networking is not just networking, going for a beer after 5 p.m. with your coworkers or that, but really how do you, I think going back to what Kary was saying, how do you make it more where it is not just self-serving, but serving the bigger society? Because if people know it, if you went there and you're talking and doing this networking and you are only interested in talking about the CEOs and directors in the room, people get it. Yeah. So how do you really care for it? How do you be more genuine about what you do? Be genuine in everything you do with a bigger cause in mind. I think you will succeed. So I think I could do that. I wish I could do that more when I was in my 20s. Off to you, Kary.
Yeah. All right. I'll tell you, one of the things that I wish I had done when I was really young is I did not get involved in any industry type work or participation in things like the Gas Machinery Research Council or any of those kinds of things that are out there until I was already in my 50s. I didn't realize in those early days how much knowledge was out there and that you could gather by going to some of these kinds of seminars or courses or big conventions. Okay. And I think I missed out a lot on that. For the first 10, 15 years, I think I could have had a much bigger network and a much more effective network than what I had. If I had gone a little bit more outside of the company into the industry, broader industry events that were going on.
Yeah,
I think that was a big
mistake. I will also give it to our students who are also on the webinar today. Some of them, you have already taken that step, right? You have decided that you're going to take away some time and do this program. And to our future students, potential students who are looking at program like this, I'm not sure you will join this, but you may join something else. I think always continuously, upskilling yourself, whether it is through networking, joining an ERG, whether it is going to a seminar, giving a talk yourself, listening to the numerous awesome TED Talks on YouTube. I mean, you gain so much of knowledge just by doing that. So great point. I think the next question, and I'll ask that question because I don't know if Courtney is there. The question is that with you both having the background in oil and gas industry, what is one thing that you believe that you appreciate about oil and gas, and which is the other one thing that you believe that they have a lot of work to do, mainly from the leadership perspective? So it's a review of industry.
And real quick, I will let you know we have 5 more minutes, so okay. Just for a time warning.
Thank you.
To me, the the oil and gas industry, I think they've been slow to recognize some of the changes that are going on in the world today. I really do. There was a lot of stuff going on that I don't pretend to know all the stuff that was going on way back in the 80s and the 90s, and the like. But I think while they've done a fairly good job in some areas, I don't think they recognize things that were starting to show up in a real timely manner, I would say. And I think they've actually done, in general, not a very good job of communicating the facts of things. And I know that's a hard thing to do because you're talking about a huge number of people out there in different societies and everything else. But I really don't think they have done a very good job at communicating things. When I would come home from overseas and I would see people in the little town I grew up in and everything, there was nothing getting down to them about this kind of stuff. And I think the industry did not do a very good job there. And I also think that, quite frankly, some of the leadership we had in those days was very brusque. I'll put it, that's the nicest way I think I could put it, quite frankly. And that doesn't do any good either. Okay. But I do think, too, that, an awful lot of good comes out of some of this stuff. And we need to recognize that. And I think they're getting there. I would like to see them move a lot faster in some areas. I'd like to see them do away with flaring. Okay. I mean, I went to bat a number of times when we were having operational problems or something and recommending that they shut back some production or something in order to keep the flare down until we could get the compressor running again. And the vast majority of the time I was told by the ops manager or something, it's not a regulatory requirement. Every now and then I would win one. Not too often, but every now and then. Okay. I think I should be winning a lot more of those. Okay. But it's the pressure everybody's under, right? That's part of the systems that we have. And changing those systems is tough. But I think the recognition is slowly coming. And it would be nice to see them do a little bit more without waiting for the regulators to come in.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's a lot that can be done, through communication. And I think you bring something very important, the proactive communication. It shouldn't, the way it has come today is where either regulators are pushing them or investors are pushing them to say things that probably they should have said earlier. I think it should have that proactive communication is what we have been talking about. It's a great example here. But I would probably add one thing which I believe oil and gas industry has done a lot. I mean, there have been incidents, don't get me wrong, the BP incident is classic one. But, what they have done in terms of safety, I mean, it's tremendous. Think about it, right? Something is operating in the middle of the ocean. There is nobody but few souls on a platform. And you are there to fend for yourself. I think they have done a great job. With that, Courtney has just appeared on screen before she kicks us out. I do want to thank you, Kary, for your time, and I do also want to, thank all our participants for the webinar today. This has been a great webinar. I have thoroughly enjoyed. I hope you took away a few things out of this. And Courtney, first and foremost, I should have said that thank you for organizing this. I know these kind of events do take a lot of effort, a lot of time. So handing it back to you, and Kary, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate participating in this, and tell everybody to please give us some feedback. I need to know how we did or how I
will. And yeah, speaking along those lines, you will get a copy of this recording in your inbox in the next 2 or 3 hours. And so if you want to review any of the content, you can. And you can find us if you're not already involved in the program. I put it in the chat right there, but it's MSEML.Sandiego.edu. And you can get connected with us via the contact link. And we'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. Thank you to our amazing speakers. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.